Today is the 12th of April 2016, and we're going to continue to look into a story from the Hidden Lamp, stories from 25 centuries of awakened women. This is edited by Florence Kaplow and Susan Moon. And the story we're going to take up tonight is called Soma Rebukes Mara. And we'll just start by reading it. It's quite short. And this is from 6th century BC India. The nun Soma was a disciple of the Buddha. One day she was deep in meditation beneath a tree in a forest grove. Mara, the Lord of Delusion, approached her, cloaked in invisibility. He whispered in her ear, "Because a woman has a naturally limited consciousness and the realm of wisdom is hard to reach, no woman has the ability to attain it." Soma recognized Mara and rebuked him, saying, "How could a woman's consciousness be a hindrance when her heart is set on liberation? Am I a woman in these matters or a man? This question has no power over me. Mara, be gone." And he was gone. This story comes from an early text called the Therigatha, which means the poems of the female elders, and it recounts the biographies and also the enlightenment verses of about 70 or more women who were actual disciples of the Buddha and were taught directly by him. This word Therigatha, Theri means elder, and in this case female elders, sometimes translated as women who have grown old in knowledge. So it's women who were wise, mature. And then the Gatha means verse or stanza or song. So it was the poetry of these women elders. This text was passed on orally for 6 centuries before it was written down, 600 years. So naturally it would have in that time gone through some changes. No doubt there were stories that were lost, but also these may well have been mythologized somewhat. Some of the stories also appear in other parts of the Pali canon, but sometimes the name of the woman will be different, or it'll be told, the same story will be told by more than one woman. So it's a little hard to know exactly how close it is to historical truths, but it rings true. In the individual stories, there's a lot that seems authentic. The other fact here is that actually, when it was written down in Sri Lanka, sometime around the 1st century BC, it was written in a different language from the one that it would have occurred in. It was written down in the literary language of Pali, and that was not the language that the Buddha spoke. He would have been teaching in Magadhi. It's related but different. So again, lots of room for things to permutate, to say. There are two characters here in the story. One is Soma and the other Mara. Let's have a look at these two. Soma was the daughter of a minister of King Bimbisara. And in some translations, this minister is called a chaplain. So it was probably somebody who had both political and perhaps ceremonial duties. Something like a prime minister, maybe crossed with a priest of some kind. Bimbisara was the king of Magadha, which is considered to be one of the great states of this time in India. Existed in the northeast of India, but also included parts of what is now Bangladesh and also Nepal. So it was quite large, and it was the larger kind of grouping within which the Buddha's father's kingdom existed as a sort of tribal entity. Bimbisara became a disciple of the Buddha. Supported him. As the daughter of a minister in this large kingdom, no doubt Soma would have had a privileged life, a good education, a comfortable life, and her life followed a pattern which was quite common for women who encountered the Buddha. First of all, she met him fairly early on in his career and became a lay disciple. But then later, after the order of nuns was started, she became a nun, she ordained, and then finally became an arahant. Arahants were those who came to awakening, we could say, a kind of saint. The translation of arahant is one who is worthy, or one who is perfected, or noble. Someone who's very advanced on the path, but not a Buddha, not a fully awakened one. The other character in the story is Mara. Mara is the nearest thing to Satan that exists in Buddhism. A kind of devil. His name means killer. And he appears to a number of the women in the Therigatha, trying to sabotage their practice. And he also appeared to Shakyamuni Buddha, both before and after his Great Awakening. Probably the most well-known appearance was right before his awakening, when he tried to lure the Buddha out of his concentration in different ways. First by giving rise to all kinds of fears and doubts, and then conjuring up his beautiful daughters who tempted him with all kinds of comforts and pleasures and beauties. And then right his last attempt to sabotage the Buddha was when he is said to have taken on the Buddha's own habit voice and got him to question whether he was worthy to come to full enlightenment. And the Buddha then touches the earth, and the earth attests to his worthiness speaking of all the places, they're saying that there are no places anywhere on this earth where the Buddha hasn't, in previous lives, offered himself for the sake of others. Stephen Batchelor, in his book Living with the Devil, goes into all the different meanings and functions that Mara has in Buddhist teaching. He says Mara is like a trickster. His ambiguity and his unpredictability reflect those same qualities in life. He appears in all kinds of different forms, using all kinds of different means to unsettle or upset those he appears before. He says he can speak with detached reason one moment, only to hurl insults and taunts the next. Like the forces of nature, he is consistently unpredictable. We cannot foresee what Mara will do next, but we can learn to recognize his signature. And there's actually a kind of theory around Mara which was developed that saw him in different ways as the devil of our physical and mental existence, the devil of compulsions, the devil of death, and the devil who is born of a god. And so he comes to represent these different aspects of ourselves. Stephen Batchelor says, he animates the compulsive anxieties and fixations that besiege us. He hovers around us as the imminence of death. He breaks into our lives like a capricious and powerful God. Another Mara is sometimes added, the devil of conditioning. This is our biological, social, and psychological history, the drives, conventions, patterns, and habits that urge us to follow the most familiar course of action, irrespective of how inappropriate or destructive it might be. And this is where this particular Mara of ours in this story fits in. This voice that Soma hears telling her, because a woman has a naturally limited consciousness and the realm of wisdom is hard to reach, no woman has the ability to attain it. Actually, in the original version, he says, you have a two-fingered wisdom. And what is behind this is that women, in order to check whether rice was cooked, would take a grain between two fingers and press it to see if it was soft. So Mara is saying, essentially, you belong in the kitchen. That's all you're good for. That's all women are good for. Actually, in other stories, he says to different women more, you belong in the bedroom. All you're interested in is men or sex. So he's putting her down. The realm of wisdom is hard to reach. He's talking about awakening here. But the story is revealing because it says that he came to her, he approached her, cloaked in invisibility. So again, as with the Buddha before his awakening, he comes to her as something invisible. And these voices of conditioning do come to us invisibly. They come as our own voices, our own internalized judgments. And as long as we don't recognize them as this, then they can be quite unassailable. They seem to carry a lot of authority. The teacher who gives a reflection on this story says, no one, and certainly not a woman, survives childhood without being imprinted with their culture's ideas of who one is and what one can or cannot do. Maybe this is getting less so as women do more and more things, break into more and more areas. But this culture is still pretty saturated with judgments about women's place. And we often get these judgments from those closest to us, even from our own mothers. Thinking about this today and preparing for this talk, I was thinking about my own mother, and she was a feminist in some way. She was involved in the National Council of Women. When before I was born, and when I was with a child, she was one of the first women to actually serve on a jury in Auckland. It was a campaign for women to offer their services. It wasn't required for women, though it had been allowed for women to volunteer. So she was a trailblazer in that area. But at the same time, she was still caught up in this idea of women being lesser. She used to say about her relationship to my father, someone has to be boss. And it wasn't her, often. And she seemed to think this was kind of a natural order of things. But even if we had the most raised consciousness type mother or parents, the messages still come from the culture, from images we see and things we read, the media. And in recent years, these images have become more and more, the images that girls see have become more and more sexualized. So these things play into the way we feel about ourselves in this insidious kind of way. And of course, not only women are affected by this, but all of us. Mara, the Lord of Delusion, approached her cloaked in invisibility. He whispered in her ear. Of course, what this Mara comes down to is thought. This invisible whisperer. It's conditioning, our conditioning that speaks to us, undermines, makes us doubt. There's a passage, I'm not sure what sutra this comes to. I think it's an early sutra. It's translated by the Edward Conza. talks about thought, and it very much ties in with how this Mara is, his invisibility, his whispering nature. We search all around for our thought, but what is thought? It is either passionate or hateful or confused. It is caught up in the past or the future or the present. What is past, that is extinct. What is future, that has not yet arrived, and the present has no stability. Thought cannot be apprehended inside or outside or in between both, for thought is immaterial, invisible, non-resisting, inconceivable, unsupported, and homeless. Thought has never been seen by any of the Buddhas, nor do they see it, nor will they see it. And what the Buddhas never see, how can that be an observable process, except in the sense that dharmas proceed by way of mistaken perception? Thought is like a magical illusion. By an imagination of what is, actually, it takes hold of a manifold of rebirths. A thought is like a stream of a river, without any staying power. As soon as it is produced, it breaks up and disappears. A thought is like the flame of a lamp, and it proceeds through causes and conditions. A thought is like lightning. It breaks up in a moment and does not stay on. Thought is like space, and it is defiled by adventitious defilements. Thought is like a bad friend, for it generates all kinds of ill. Thought is like a fishhook, which looks pleasant, though it is not. Thought is like a bluebottle fly, because it looks for what is lovely in what is not. Thought is like an enemy, because it inflicts much agony. Thought, though one searches for it all around, cannot be found. What cannot be found, that cannot be apprehended. What cannot be apprehended, that cannot be past, present, or future. What is not past, present, or future, that is beyond the three dimensions of time. What is beyond the three dimensions of time, that neither is nor is not. So one way to not be misled by Mara is to recognize him. And this is what happens with Soma. She is able to not identify with this taunt from Mara, but see through his words, see the untruth in what he says. How could a woman's consciousness be a hindrance when her heart is set on liberation? Am I a woman in these matters or a man? This question has no power over me. Mara, be gone. She dismisses this thought. One of the epithets for Mara is antaka. Anta means end, limit, boundary or horizon, and ka implies one who makes or imposes such things. Stephen Batchelor says, Mara is that which limits us, confines us within boundaries, fixes our horizons, and brings everything to an end. Not only are we limited by what our physical body allows us to do, and ultimately by its death, we are constrained by other boundaries that are neither unavoidable or necessary. We inherit or adopt opinions about ourselves and the world that we cling to and refuse to relinquish. So certain are we of being right that our convictions feel embedded in our flesh, yet to be ensnared by them locks us into fixed dogmatic positions, which are a form of intellectual and spiritual death. So really the story, it frames it in terms of a woman's ability, but we can use the teaching in this story really to address all the kinds of things that we tell us, the thoughts that we have during our practice, which stymie us, which limit us in different ways. And these come from different sources. In this case, it's something that's embedded in the culture of the time, very much in ancient India. Things that we, something that we absorb. It can be like this, that we're unconscious of, such as women are inferior or second class. It can also, these things can come from stuff that happened to us when we were children or later. Traumas, losses, can embed statements about life and about ourselves, which can feel very real. Also, we may, when we go through different kinds of traumas or experiences, we may tell ourselves things as ways of coping. And those things we tell ourselves become embedded in us and pop up again and again. Just give an example of something like that is children often believe that if somebody dies, it was their fault if a parent dies when the child is young. It's because the child was bad or wished ill of the parent, which of course all children do. Sometimes these things can be something we were actually told. I knew somebody who struggled a lot with chanting because he'd been told by a teacher when he was in school, you can't sing. These things can be told to us once, but then we perpetuate them, we carry them by repeating them over and over again to ourselves. When we don't recognize a thought as simply a thought, a substanceless bit of energy, then we often identify with it. We take it to be true, and of course, and then in a certain way, it becomes true when we take it as being true. Soma gives us a clue to the way out of this predicament. Soma recognized Mara and rebuked him, saying, "How could a woman's consciousness be a hindrance when her heart is set on liberation?" To set one's heart on liberation. This changes everything. To set one's heart on liberation is to make a kind of vow. A vow to wake up. This is the vow that it transforms all of our experience. If our vow is to wake up, then everything we experience can become fodder for that process. Because our job isn't to clean up our minds or get rid of these kinds of thoughts that Mara whispers in our ears, but to recognize them. it's really impossible to emphasize enough how important vows are in our training. Here's what Chiyama Roshi says about the bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is an ordinary person who takes up a course in his or her life that moves in the direction of Buddha. You're a bodhisattva, I'm a bodhisattva. Actually, anyone who directs their attention, their life, to practicing the way of life of a Buddha is a bodhisattva. We read about Kannon Bosatsu or Monju Bosatsu, and these are great bodhisattvas, but we too have to have confidence or faith that we are also bodhisattvas. Most people live by their desires or karma. That's what the expression Gosho no Bumpo means. Gosho are the obstructions to practicing the way caused by our evil actions in the past. Bompu simply means ordinary human being. That is one who lives by karma. Our actions are dictated by our karma. We are born into this world with our desires and may live our lives just reacting or responding to them. In contrast is Gansho no Bosatsu, or a bodhisattva who lives by vow. The life that flows through each of us and through everything around us is actually all connected. To say that, of course, means that who I really am cannot be separated from all the things that surround me. Or to put it another way, all sentient beings have their existence and live within my life. So, needless to say, that includes even the fate of all mankind. That too lies within me. Therefore, just how mankind might truly live out its life becomes what I aim at as my direction. This aiming or living while moving in a certain direction is what is meant by vow. In other words, it is the motivation for living that is different for a bodhisattva. Ordinary people live thinking only about their own personal, narrow circumstances connected with their desires. In contrast to that, a bodhisattva, though undeniably still an ordinary human being like everyone else, lives by vow. Because of that, the significance of his or her life is not the same. For us as bodhisattvas, all aspects of life, including the fate of humanity itself, live within us. It is with this in mind that we work to discover and manifest the most vital and alive posture that we can make in living our life. Even with all its imperfections, or with all the things we struggle with, if we are living oriented towards waking up, and towards waking up in order that others may also wake up, then all the troubles that we experience, they don't have the power to deflect us from our purpose. Our troubles, in fact, are grist for the mill. There's a Vajrayana teaching on this, which says if you just see everything that comes your way, whatever obstacles, whatever hardships, whatever doubts, if you just see them as blessings. And this text says if you see them as blessings, even if they are not, they will in fact be blessings. If you do this, whatever hardships and obstacles you experience become very positive. Although this is not always easy to do, if you perceive and transform difficulties in this way, your practice will go very smoothly and beautifully, and you will deepen and expand your meditation power. If our aim in our practice, if our vow has an element, even just a fairly small element of cultivating compassion, then we can see our obstacles and our difficulties as ways of deepening our compassion. Ways of having gone through them, we can then resonate with others who are struggling, who are in difficulty. So they really are, in a sense, blessings. It can be helpful to identify the kinds of thoughts that undermine us in our practice, and to give them names. Of course, in a sense, Mara is our own habit voice and our own shadow material that we're having to work with. But there's a danger if we just see it in that way that we do identify with it and we say, this is me. But if we can name it, and whether it's giving it the name Mara or other names that we invent, it can make a difference, because we can take it all less personally. What is it that we tell ourselves which is particularly unhelpful? Things like, I haven't got what it takes, or my habits are too ingrained or too heavy. Or it can be on the other side, the pride side. I'm special. I've already got a lot of insight. Or maybe it's just clinging to comforts of different kinds. Familiar thoughts can be comforting, or sleep, or food. Or thinking that we can't do it in this lifetime, maybe the next one. Seeing the emptiness of these thought forms. Mark Epstein says, when we grasp the emptiness of our false selves, we are touching a little bit of truth. If we can relax into that truth, we can discover ourselves in a new way. To relax into these thoughts. You can even give them humorous names, ridiculous names. Lighten them up. As I said before, these various things that Mara throws us come in different flavors. Sometimes these are called as armies. Sensual desire, discontent, hunger and thirst, craving, lethargy, fear, doubt, restlessness, longing for gain, praise, honour and fame, and extolling oneself while disparaging others. All of these the Buddha faced at one time or another. These forces. Batchelor writes, identifying with a desire or a fear tightens the knot that binds one to it, and thereby the sway it can have over one. Only when Buddha was able to experience the desires and fears that threatened to overwhelm him as nothing but impersonal and ephemeral conditions of mind and body did they lose their power to mesmerize him. Instead of perceiving them as forces of an avenging army intent on his destruction, he recognized that they were no more solid than brittle, unfired pots that crumble on being struck with a well-aimed stone. As soon as the Buddha stopped convulsively identifying the thoughts, feelings and sensations that arose within him as me or mine, Mara could no longer influence him. There are scenes in the life of the Buddha where he just says, "Is that you, Mara?" And Mara then slinks away. He only can have power when he's not recognized, when he's taken to be something true, something that is ourselves. This does not mean that Buddha was either unaware of these thoughts and feelings or that they no longer occurred for him. Rather than deleting them, he discovered a way of being with them in which they could gain no purchase on him. Mara describes this with an analogy. "I remember once seeing a crow hovering above a lump of fat on the ground. Food, it thought, but the lump turned out to be a rock, hard and inedible. The crow flew away in disgust. I too have had enough. I'm like that crow pecking on a rock. I am finished with Gautama." And he goes off in disgust. So the Buddha, in a sense, doesn't get rid of Mara, but makes himself immune. And in fact, even after his great awakening, Mara would come and bother him. Or try to bother him, we could say. Of course, the fundamental way in which we free ourselves from Mara is through our daily practice of training our mind to release all thoughts, not just the problematic ones, but to recognize what is going on in our mind, to notice thoughts coming and going, to recognize what is a thought moment and then another thought moment, without identifying with the content of the thought, without pushing it away. This is how we put our vow into practice, breath by breath, moment by moment. We'll stop here and recite the 4 vows.